More than 26,000 American casualties for 8 square miles of volcanic ash. The photograph made Iwo Jima look like a triumph. The casualty list made it look like madness. 6 men raised a flag on Mount Suribachi, and America saw victory. But the battle below them had barely begun, and 3 of those 6 men would never leave the island alive. The man waiting underground knew Japan could not win. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi designed his defense around a different goal: make the price so horrifying that America would fear invading Japan itself. That turns Iwo Jima into a harder story than the famous photograph suggests. Why did America need this island? How did Kuribayashi make it so costly, and was it worth the price? In early 1945, B-29 bombers were striking Japan from the Mariana Islands. Their missions crossed thousands of miles of ocean, and damaged aircraft faced a long, dangerous flight home. Iwo Jima sat roughly halfway between the Marianas and Japan. It held Japanese airfields, warning stations, and a possible emergency runway for American bombers that could not reach home. Planners also expected fighters based on Iwo to escort the B-29s. On a map, taking the island promised safer bombing missions and removed a Japanese outpost from the route. The strategic case sounded simple. The estimated human cost was badly wrong. Kuribayashi understood American firepower. He had traveled in the United States and knew Japan could not match its ships, aircraft, or industry in an open fight. So he abandoned the usual plan of destroying an invasion at the waterline. Most of his men would not defend the beach. They would disappear beneath the island and wait. Japanese troops carved miles of tunnels through volcanic rock. The network connected command posts, hospitals, caves, bunkers, and hidden gun positions across the island. The positions protected one another. A Marine attacking the bunker in front of him could be hit from another opening he could not see, then attacked again from ground already cleared. Kuribayashi forbade the early mass charges that had wasted Japanese lives in previous battles. His soldiers were ordered to remain under cover, conserve ammunition, and die where they fought. His trap depended on patience. Let the bombardment tear up an empty surface. Let the Marines land. Let men, vehicles, ammunition, and fuel crowd the beaches, then open fire. Marine commanders wanted many days of naval bombardment. Competing demands, weather, visibility, and ammunition limits reduced the main pre-invasion shelling to 3 days. Warships and aircraft smashed the landscape. From offshore, Iwo Jima appeared pulverized, but the bombardment mostly churned the surface while Kuribayashi's force waited deep underground. When the shelling shifted, surviving crews climbed back to their weapons and waited. On February 19, 1945, landing craft carried the first Marines toward the Black Beaches. Some men had been told resistance might collapse after the bombardment. The first waves landed under an unnatural silence. No wall of fire met them at the surf. They pushed inland and began to wonder whether the shelling had worked. Then the ground itself slowed them. Soft volcanic ash swallowed boots, bogged down vehicles, and made foxholes collapse as quickly as Marines could dig them. More landing craft arrived, men and machines stacked up on narrow terraces with little cover. Kuribayashi waited until the beach had become the crowded target he wanted. Then Iwo Jima erupted. Mortars, artillery, and machine guns fired from hidden positions across the island. The bombardment had concealed many of the weapons instead of destroying them. Vehicles burned at the waterline. Landing craft struggled through wreckage. Units became separated, officers were hit, and the beach filled faster than the wounded could be removed. By the end of the first day, the Americans had a foothold. They had also suffered roughly 2,400 casualties. The cost of the island was already escaping every prediction. The Marines' greatest problem was not simply enemy fire. It was an enemy they could rarely see, occupying a battlefield with no dependable front and no secure rear. A bunker could fall silent, be declared cleared, and begin firing again after Japanese soldiers returned through a tunnel. Progress on the surface did not mean control underground. Every advance became a close-range engineering problem. Grenades, demolition charges, tanks, and flamethrowers were used to seal or destroy positions one opening at a time. The defenders forced the Americans to trade time and lives for yards. That was Kuribayashi's strategy, working exactly as intended, even while his island was being conquered. At the southern end of the island, Mount Suribachi towered over the landing beaches. Its caves and guns threatened the supply line behind the advancing Marines. Marines isolated the mountain and fought upward through its defenses. On the fourth morning, a patrol reached the summit and raised a small American flag. The sight triggered cheers from the beaches and horns from ships offshore. For exhausted men under fire, it felt like proof that the worst might be ending. Later, a larger flag went up. Photographer Joe Rosenthal caught 5 Marines and a Navy corpsman pushing the pole into place in one of history's most recognizable images. The photograph reached the United States before the battle ended. It became a symbol of victory, sacrifice, and national purpose. On Iwo Jima, it created a dangerous illusion. Suribachi had fallen, but most of Kuribayashi's army was dug into the north. The flag marked the end of the opening phase, not the end of the battle. Ahead lay broken ridges, ravines, and fortified hills. The Marines gave parts of this ground names such as the Amphitheater, Turkey Knob, and the Meat Grinder. Those names described a system, not isolated strongpoints. Caves covered bunkers, bunkers covered ravines, and every approach exposed attackers to fire from another angle. American artillery and aircraft could shatter visible positions. The infantry still had to move close enough to find hidden entrances and stop defenders from returning. A ridge taken during the day could be attacked again that night. Darkness brought infiltrators, flares, and sudden violence at close range. Sleep came in fragments, often within reach of tunnel entrances no one had yet discovered. Corpsmen moved through fire to treat the wounded. Stretcher teams carried men back across terrain that had already cost lives to cross in the opposite direction. The attack continued because stopping did not make the positions harmless. As long as the tunnel network survived, the airfields, beaches, and thousands of men behind the line remained exposed. Even before the island was secure, engineers repaired its runways. On March 4th, the first damaged B-29 made an emergency landing while fighting continued nearby. That landing showed the value planners had promised. It did not answer the harder question of how often the runway would truly save an aircraft that could not reach the Marianas. By mid-March, Kuribayashi's force had been compressed into the northern tip. Food, water, ammunition, and communications were failing, but organized resistance continued underground. Near the end, surviving Japanese troops launched a final night attack against American positions. Fighting continued after commanders had declared the island secure. Kuribayashi disappeared during the final resistance. His body was never identified with certainty, leaving the architect of the fortress buried somewhere inside the battlefield he created. After 36 days, more than 26,000 Americans had been killed or wounded, including about 6,800 dead. Nearly all of roughly 20,000 Japanese defenders were dead. American total casualties exceeded those of the defending force. For an assault on 8 square miles, the arithmetic was almost impossible to absorb. The operation produced 27 medals of honor, many awarded posthumously. The courage is not the disputed part of Iwo Jima. Marines, sailors, corpsmen, and support crews performed their missions under conditions that repeatedly demanded the impossible. The dispute is about the decision that put them there. By the end of the war, more than 2,000 B-29s had made unscheduled landings on Iwo. Those landings mattered to every crew that arrived with damage, mechanical trouble, or too little fuel. The runway was a real refuge, not an invented justification. But later analysis complicates the famous claim that every aircraft would otherwise have crashed at sea. Many probably could have continued to the Marianas and landed on Iwo as a sensible precaution. The fighter escort mission also contributed less than planners expected. By then, Japanese fighter strength and fuel supplies were declining, while the B-29 campaign changed tactics. Iwo removed Japanese warning and attack facilities from the bomber route, supported rescue operations, and provided an emergency base. Those were genuine military benefits. Whether those benefits justified nearly 27,000 American casualties cannot be solved by repeating a single number about bombers or by judging commanders with perfect hindsight. Planners made the decision with the information they had before the battle. Kuribayashi then imposed a cost their estimates had failed to imagine. That is why the flag photograph remains both inspiring and incomplete. It captures courage and unity, but not the month of killing that continued beyond the edge of its frame. Iwo Jima was a victory. It was also a warning about what an invasion of the Japanese home islands could demand. Both truths belong in the same story. Next time, the Battle of Britain fought in the summer skies over England. After that, you decide. Tell us which battle or campaign we should cover in the comments.